Well, sure, I'd rather be reporting nothing but good news, but that wouldn't be fair to you, to me, to the MS community at large. It's not always good news. Well, hello and welcome to another episode of You and Me and Multiple Sclerosis. My name is Pam and I've been living with multiple sclerosis for almost 41 years. So I've had my share of disappointments. So another one isn't really all that surprising, though it's still sad. I'm going to show you just parts of an article today. The big news is that PIPE-307, which we made a video about a while back, we were pretty excited about. Turns out it didn't meet any of its objectives in the clinical trial that just finished. And so I guess we have to say it's going to be scrapped. And here's the article, very sad. In Multiple Sclerosis News Today, new MS experimental therapy misses main goals in clinical trial. Phase 2 study finds no efficacy signals for PIPE-307 despite good safety profile. And this was published on November 24th of 2025. Here are the findings in a nutshell. PIPE-307 failed to meet primary or secondary goals in a Phase 2 MS trial. The therapy was being tested for improvements in vision and other MS outcomes. Despite the lack of efficacy, PIPE-307 was generally safe and well tolerated, but then again, so is tap water. And they say that a Phase 2 clinical trial testing PIPE-307, an experimental therapy designed to support myelin repair in people with multiple sclerosis, has failed to meet its primary or secondary efficacy goals. The US-based VISTA trial, and there's the clinical trial number, enrolled more than 180 adults with relapsing remitting MS. Participants received one of two PIPE-307 doses or a placebo for about 6 months. The trial's main goals were to assess PIPE-307's safety and to determine whether the oral therapy improved vision as assessed with 2.5% low contrast letter acuity. Secondary measures included walking ability, dexterity, cognitive function, and disease biomarker. So there were high hopes for PIPE-307, as you might remember from the first video that I did, that I'll be sure to link below. It was supposed to improve lots of areas of our symptoms. PIPE-307 showed an acceptable safety and tolerability at both doses, but the trial did not meet its pre-specified primary or secondary efficacy goals. Continuum Therapeutics announced in a company press release. How PIPE-307 is designed to support myelin repair. The company, which is developing PIPE-307 in partnership with Johnson & Johnson Innovative Medicine, didn't share additional details, noting that analyses are ongoing and that full results will be presented at a future medical meeting and published in a journal. We're disappointed by these results, but are grateful to the VISTA trial investigators and especially to the patients and their families, said Timothy Watkins, MD, Chief Medical Officer and Head of Development at Continuum. We intend to learn from these data and remain committed to pursuing novel therapies for patients with inflammatory and fibrotic diseases. So I get the distinct impression from this statement that we will not be seeing any more out of PIPE-307 because he's saying they're going to move on to other kinds of things rather than continuing to refine PIPE-307. So this may be the last we end up hearing about that. Well, to confirm that kind of a downer feeling I came away with, I just stepped out here to look at the Clinical Trials Arena website, and this was published on November 21st of 2025, so around the same time. Continuum's MS drug falls short in Phase 2 trial. Despite PIPE-307's failure in relapsing MS, analysts still have hope for the candidate in major depressive disorder, which is a different disease, which a person with MS might have, but it's not mainly for MS. Let me just look at a couple of paragraphs here. I'll link this whole article in the description box below, but here are just a few of the paragraphs that give you the idea of what the future holds for PIPE-307. The California-based biopharma saw an 11% drop in its stock value from $12.22 at market close on 20 November to $10.97 when the market opened on 21 November after the news was announced. And I have a feeling there'll probably be further drops. Christy Wong, managing neurology analyst at Global Data, noted that the results of the VISTA trial are not entirely surprising, given the modest results of the REBUILD study on clemastine. The VISTA results suggest that M1 antagonism with PIPE-307 alone may be insufficient for clinically measurable remyelination or functional improvement, Wong added. And here, this part really tells us what we want to know. Switching strategies. Outside of its development efforts involving PIPE-307, Continuum is hoping for success with its lead candidate, PIPE-791, in idiopathic pulmonary fibrosis, or IPF. In August of 2025, it set its sights on the IPF market, holding off trials involving PIPE-791 in progressive MS and its early-stage candidate, CTX-343, so it could advance PIPE-791 to a Phase 2 trial in IPF. In a 30 October statement, Continuum noted that it is on the cusp of beginning the Phase 2 study of the lysophosphatidylcholine acid receptor 1, LPAR1 antagonist in IPF. Minter supports this strategy, noting that he views the LPAR1 mechanism of action as exciting due to its efficacy on forced vital capacity, or FVC, observed in a Phase 2 study with Bristol Myers Squibb's BMS admilparant. Okay, so in other words, they're redirecting their research efforts and investment dollars to some new areas. I'm curious about the clinical trial that they wanted to put off that involved progressive MS, but given the lukewarm results of the PIPE-307 on relapsing MS, I highly doubt they're going to get the investors that they're hoping for that particular thing. So, sorry to say, this isn't anything we can particularly be thankful for, but it doesn't look like PIPE-307 is going to be going any further. Professor G, Dr. Gavin Giovannoni, recently posted an update to his MS Selfie blog, and he called it Bad News, Another Negative Remyelination Trial. I just want to read a few of his concluding remarks and observations along these lines. I think they're realistic, but they're also encouraging. He says that instead of trying to promote remyelination and recovery of functions in persons with MS, our aim should be to treat MS effectively early on. In other words, to prevent the need for remyelination therapies in the first place. Well, I would totally agree with that. The question is, how do we get the broader MS community to promote the use of alemtuzumab and human stem cell transplant or similar agents as the default first-line therapy for MS? Some of us have tried, including me, but failed miserably with this seemingly easy task. By the time most persons with MS get to alemtuzumab or human stem cell transplant, they have so much damage that they need restoration therapies. And that would include people like me and maybe you as well. If we're well into secondary progressive or primary progressive MS, we have axons that are gone, let alone myelin damage. He continues, as we think we now know, the potential cause of MS, trying to put out a fire without correcting the upstream pathology, is folly. Therefore, maybe we should only be trying remyelination and neurorestorative therapies in people who have stable fixed deficits with no ongoing evidence of any inflammatory disease activity post-alemtuzumab or human stem cell transplant. The irony of letting persons with MS become disabled before treated with alemtuzumab or autologous hematopoietic stem cell transplantation, or AHSCT, is inadvertently creating a trial-ready population of subjects for remyelination therapy trials. I think he's being a little sarcastic and ironic with that comment. By letting us get to this point, we're actually the population they need to recruit for these clinical trials on remyelination. Yikes. And as he concludes, we need to answer some fundamental questions about remyelination and neurorestorative therapies before we spend more money and energy on futile trials. Any thoughts or counter-arguments on my position? I am sorry to be the bearer of bad news. Bad news is unavoidable. What is important is to reflect on the news, learn lessons, adjust hypotheses, or formulate new ones, and move forward testing them. This is the nature of science. And I just want to go back. He talks about neurorestorative therapies, and what he's getting at there is, again, I think it really does relate to the concept of neuroplasticity that we've discussed here, that the brain is infinitely able to create new pathways to accomplish tasks. I believe that I've seen that happen in my life in the cognitive area, because while I'm sure looking at my brain, I would have had some cognitive deficits by now, certainly, in some areas at least. I have relatively few. Maybe processing speed is a little down, but I don't think that I've really been damaged, particularly in that area. And I'm thinking a lot of it has to do with the neuroplasticity that comes from just repeated attempts, though they didn't really seem like attempts to me at the time, of accomplishing the same task in a different way, because you can't do it the way you usually did it. And that's all going on under the surface. I don't know how I'm doing it, but somehow it's happening. Any therapy that you do, you want to follow up and see if it's doing any good. And same thing with neurorestorative therapies. He's saying if we had back surgery or anything else, there would definitely be follow-up therapy to test whether the surgery was effective. You'd have exercises you'd be doing to make sure that your surgery was optimally successful. So I think that's what, we need to be thinking about, is that there are other avenues that we can be looking at, even if remyelination never ever gets off the ground. And that is quite possible. It may well happen that that is the case. But I appreciate Professor G's remarks on this subject, and I'd be curious to know what you think. But all is not lost, okay? Because one thing we do need to make sure we remember is that the clinical trial process is not just a pass-through because we don't want the stockholders or the pharmaceutical companies to be unhappy. If it doesn't meet its endpoints, it doesn't meet its endpoints. And that's all there is to it. I do really appreciate actually getting this little bit of data that can reassure me that the clinical trial process is above board and ethical. I especially appreciate that, given that we volunteer ourselves to be parts of these clinical trials. If it were all a big ruse, a scam, that would really disappoint me. So I guess, in a way, even though I'm very sorry that PIPE-307 is not going to advance as a treatment for multiple sclerosis, we do know that we can trust the clinical trial process, even though, of course, it's always good to keep healthy skepticism about anything in life. But this was very good news in that way. That's my nature. I have to pull good news out of bad. That's the best I can do, but I think it's pretty good. So let me know what you think, and I will see you again in my next video.